I'm ready. Right, okay, let us crack on. So, most of you on here do know me pretty well, but a couple of you don't. So, for the benefit of those, quick introduction. I'm Helen Pethybridge, running Chiltern Coaching. I have 23 years prior to doing my business coaching in corporate senior HR roles, and then 10 years working with SME teams. So overall, that's 33 years of working with people in business. And I just say that as a precursor to the fact that I do know what I'm doing when it comes to people. That experience combined has been recognised. I'm a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. So I speak from knowledge and experience. And what today is going to be is a summary of the legislation that is coming our way. And more importantly, in my view, a practical interpretation of what we need to do to be ready for that so we don't get caught up in that legislation. So, first slide. This is, hopefully you've got the note, and I hope you've got your phones next to you. A webinar wouldn't be a webinar with me if we didn't involve Menti. So pick up your phones and point them at the QR code, and that will get you into the right space to answer the question. Lovely, somebody's there already.
Just to say, Helen, I'm driving, so I'm not doing that.
No, please don't. Okie dokie. Oh, 5 is the most numbers. I've got, 19 responses. Excellent. That just gives me a sense of what's the rough numbers we've got in the team so we can see what the kind of impact is. So thank you all. And now you're all familiar with Menti. So my next question is also a Menti question, which is just so I know what level of understanding we have at the moment in terms of the Employment Rights Bill. So is this really, when the marketing for this event came out, the first you'd heard of it? Do you sort of aware but don't really know what it means? You do actually understand what it means, but you haven't done anything about it, or you have a complete full plan. Now, I'm not expecting too many in the last category, because otherwise you probably wouldn't be here. Okay, a few more responses to come in, because I think we've got 18 on the last one. So most of you looking at this are aware but not really familiar with the details. So there were some headlines probably back in October, but it's gone a bit quiet at the moment. So good, we'll get into the details. Not all the details, because there is a lot about it, but most of the pertinent ones. Thank you for doing that. So before getting into the Employment Rights Bill, I'd like just to make sure we're totally conscious of today's employment context. I spent a good portion of my corporate HR career, I would say the last, I don't know, probably even 10 years, was talking about this war for talent that was going to happen between who was going to get the best talent and how we were going to attract it, because demographically, the population was aging and there was less young blood coming through just numerically. Well, I think post-pandemic, my perspective is now the war for talent has happened, it's over, and talent won. It wasn't any business, it was talent. The individuals that we are chasing after to get into our organisations, there are, I would say, not enough A players that we all want to have, and therefore we are competing to get those best ones and to be attractive enough to them. So I say that at the beginning here because fulfilling the legal requirements is one thing, one standard, if you like. Ensuring you are attractive to the talent that you want in your organization is a completely different standard that we need to work to. So I'll allude to that as we go through. There might be a legal piece, but actually it's kind of not material if you really want the best people, because you're going to have to do something different anyhow. And that overview sort of applies to the whole lot. But you need to know what is absolutely necessary first off. So the biggest single change I would say out of the lot, which is probably the one you've seen on headlines, is full employment rights that will be available from day one. Now, how this compares is currently, I'm sure many of you will be aware that at the moment, if you have an employee up to 2 years, you are relatively safe to have a conversation. If it's not working out, to say it's not working out, let's bring this to a close, and you can separate nicely without any huge process to go through or any huge risk. The exceptions to that currently would be any risk of discrimination, which is an automatic right from day one already. The bill, as it's currently written, has full protection from day one. Now, I say as it's currently written because this was all announced with a big fanfare in October last year. It is currently in consultation, so nothing is firm yet. But I would say the principles are going, that is what's going to be in the legislation. There's wiggle room during the consultation for some of this to change. So I do believe there will have to be, and they are talking about some probation period that will be allowed, but also saying it will require a light touch process, whatever a light touch process is. I've seen a variety of timelines for that probation. I don't think it'll be 9 months. I suspect it'll be closer. I mean, I guess it could be 1 month. I'm hoping they'd give us 3. It is as yet unclear, but it will certainly come down significantly from the 2 years that it is currently. What this means financially to you is that if somebody has full employment rights, they can claim unfair dismissal, and unfair dismissal can be as simple as you not following your own process. So if you're going through any process with them and you're not following your own process and they don't like the fact that you aren't, they could claim unfair dismissal, not following on your disciplinary process in particular. And the maximum award that a tribunal can give you is £115,000. Now that is going to be for a fairly significant failure on behalf of the employer, but that is the maximum. £115,000 can be awarded for unfair dismissal. So we don't want to be going there, suffice to say. So how can we mitigate this? We can mitigate it by making sure, as much as we can, we get the right people into your business from day one. We always want to do that anyhow, because the cost of time and money of recruiting somebody, onboarding them, getting them up and running in your organization is quite significant. So ideally, you only want to do it once. Having a poor performer in that role is very expensive. So if you get it wrong, you do have to go again. But we do want to get it right as much as possible. And when I work with them, SME organizations in particular, the recruitment process can be a little bit, 1, light, and 2, not as robust as it should be. It might consist of a simple interview, typically by somebody who hasn't been trained in how to interview. It's not against clear competencies. They're not competency-based questions. You're not actually seeing them do anything. So first off, you need to be clear at what standard you are looking for. Also, it is such an easy trap to get into. You're desperate to have somebody in that role, and you unconsciously lower your standards to get somebody into that role, which is always a false economy, because in the end, you end up needing to move them on. So first off, be really clear what the standards are for somebody coming into your organization. Make sure you create a clear and rigorous selection process. I can do a whole webinar, in fact, I have done a whole webinar in selection process. So if this is something you feel you need to brush up on, please let me know. I can do another event and go through that again to just make a note. But we need to make sure that it is really rigorous. The next thing you need to make sure is actually onboarding, I think, becomes more critical than ever. It always is important because you've gone through this whole process to find the person that you really want. So you need to get them effective as thoroughly and quickly as possible and make sure they have a great experience and stay with you. So that's always been important. Now, I believe you also need to add, you need to, as soon as is practically possible, see their performance in role so that you can quickly see if they're going to be performing for you or not. Because we might only have 1, 2, 3 months. 9 months, much easier to see if somebody's performing in role. 3 months, I mean, it's quite rare to get a lot of real work done in less than a month, depending on the role. And for more senior roles, it can be longer before they're on board enough to see how they really perform. So you're going to have to be very careful about how you do this to get to real work as soon as possible. My very simple guide when hiring is you should feel in your gut and in your heart excited about the person joining you. If you are not excited, they're probably not the right person. It's that simple a check. The second point there, equally important, which is why I've bolded it in capital letters, is be decisive. The war for talent, talent won. They're choosing where they go. They are not hanging around for you to go through a 10-stage selection process and come back to them 5 days after they last saw you. If you're excited, get on, offer them a compelling offer so you can start. So that's getting the right talent in. When you've got the right talent in, you need to be working with robust management practices. You need to be actively managing your teams, experienced and new, so that you know they are performing, you are tracking, you have some data, you've got clear objectives, you're having one-to-ones to see progress against those objectives. If the role is suitable for this, you've got some data around numbers, what they're doing, whatever the role is. So we need that for our new starters to make sure if they're not right, we can move them out on the light process, whatever that is that's coming in. The reason I wanted to do this webinar now, several months before this is coming in, is if you have people who are under 2 years service now, you absolutely need to be doing your robust management so you can see and be clear if they are good enough to stay or not. Because if you're on the fence with some current team members, you need to get off that fence before this legislation comes in. So you need some clear information and data to help you make that decision. And I think this whole piece is so important because what I see is deciding a hire you've made is not right is a tough decision to make. It's tough because you actually have to start by admitting yourself you've got it a bit wrong. It's tough because it's a difficult conversation to have with them. And therefore, it's a decision that is often put off. And what this legislation, when it comes in, is going to do is remove that ability to put off these kind of decisions. Because if you put it off and waver and don't make a decision, boom, they're going to have their rights and you are stuck with them. And the way to move them on will be a formal performance management process. Anybody who's been through that will know it takes months. it takes energy and distracts you from growing your business. So we have to change the way you're managing your people in many ways to make sure that you don't have to go through that process. So I will just stop there actually. Any questions on this full employment rights piece?
Yeah, I do, Helen.
Yeah, please speak up.
Is there any law around asking someone to come in for a trial day before employing them? Or is that considered part of an employment? 'Cause quite a lot of companies do that, don't they? They put you through experience days and you're expected to come in and still be in a list of candidates. Is that okay to do?
I do think that is okay to do. I think it's nice to compensate them for that, but they can take a day's holiday from their current employer. Paying them can be a bit tricky, or you can give them an extra day's holiday or something like that when they join.
But if they don't join, then they've worked for nothing.
Yes. So find a way. Maybe you could give them a voucher, but I think it's definitely, or maybe you do a half day.
Yeah.
Half day I think is absolutely fine to do without compensation. I would do it to your final choice candidate.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a whole number of them, but yeah, I think that is something that we can do and should do more. Great point. Yeah.
Can I ask, this only applies to employees, not self-employed, is that
right? It does only apply to employees, but then just be careful that your self-employed person is genuinely self-employed rather than an employee. If they are only working for you exclusively for a period of time, they effectively in the law are employees.
Hard to know what they're doing in their other 2 days a week if they only do 3 days a week now, right? So.
Yeah, well, a genuine I'm not a legal expert on that definition because it is quite involved.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just messing. I kind of know it, but I just wanted to double check. So thanks.
Yeah, this is for employees, but there are a number of people floating around who really should be employees who aren't. So watch that one.
Yeah, I was strongly advised. I've got 3 ladies that work for me. They're all part-timers. They do 2 days each, and I was strongly advised that the fact that they weren't working for anybody else any other days, that is my responsibility to know that. And if they're not working for anybody else, they are effectively an employee and they have the rights of an employee. And I am mistreating them if I don't treat them as such on my payroll. So I've had to bring them all in, do SSP, do holiday pay, and bring everything in because legally I'm putting myself in a sticky situation.
Thanks, Liz.
They're a part-time employee.
One of my subcontractors on this call, so that's great news for him, bad news for me.
Sorry.
Susan, have you got a question?
Yeah, the other question is if you employ somebody and it's their second job, do they get all of the entitlements from both jobs?
If they are employed, yes, I believe they would do.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Helen, it's Barry. Can you just let me know why you couldn't pay someone to come in and do a trial day or a trial week?
You can do. You've just got to put them on your payroll.
Just for that one day or that week?
Yes, and then I'm not sure because you put them on the payroll, have they become an employee? This is where we need a full.
Okay, so because up to now, if we've got someone in on a trial day or a trial week, they are not currently employed. Generally, the people that we've taken on, and we would normally take them on the basis, just like taking someone in on casual labour, we would get an invoice from them and leave the.
I think that's a neat way to do it. Yes, that would be a neat way to do it. A lot of employees wouldn't know what an invoice was.
Yeah, we just help them out with that. Just help them out. A piece of paper that says, we're employing you on a casual basis for a day or a week, and we do that on a trial basis. Then we take them on a full payroll after that.
Yeah, that's a neat way round. That's a neat way round.
Right.
Good. Excellent. Am I okay to go on? Good. Right, so that's the biggie. This is one that's causing a lot of concern, I think, but I'm not sure it's so big. So is the right to request flexible working. So there is already the right to request flexible working. I've kind of included this particularly because I think as business owners, we can manage this much more strongly. So the wording here is very clear, and we need to read it properly. It's the right to request, not the right to give flexible working. So everyone has a right to request flexible working from day one. What is changing is that you as a business are going to have to explain that. And the only way you can explain that you can't offer flexible working are these 8 grounds on which you can safely refuse it. So they're actually pretty all-encompassing when you look at them. Burden of additional cost, but that needs to be true, obviously. The fact that you can't organise work amongst existing staff in terms of somebody wants to work Monday, Tuesday, and you don't have anybody who's going to cover Thursday, Friday, and you can't recruit somebody to cover Wednesday, Thursday, Friday because you've tried and it's failed. If it's going to impact the quality of the service you provide or the product in some way, other employees' performance, it's going to impact your customers negatively, or they want to work days where you simply don't need the resource on those days in terms of point 7 there. Or you have structure changes that are in the offing, maybe not known, that mean it's not appropriate. So if we are genuinely, and this comes back to the war for talent, talent's one, if you want the top talent, you do genuinely need to listen to what their preferred working is. And but if you consider it robustly, you can reject that based on one of these 8 factors. And these 8 factors have been around for a good long time. These are not new. So how do we mitigate this? And I'm actually a big fan of flexible working, but I'm a big fan of flexible working that works for the employee and the business. So when you have a request for flexible working, it is a conversation. There is a negotiation, for better word, in terms of what the individual wants and what you want. And I always advise leaders to find out what is the outcome the individual is wanting as a result of working flexibly. Because they might have come up with a request and a structure of working that they're looking for to meet. They will have a need. There's a reason why they want it. You might not be able to accommodate that particular structure they're proposing, but you could accommodate something different that still allows them to meet that end goal that they had. So that's really understand why they're asking for it. What do they want to achieve from having it? And make sure you are balancing that business need. For example, as a principal, I find it's quite difficult to get full engagement from part-time employees who are in less than half the week. That said, I know Liz, just you said all of your leaders are 2 days a week. I prefer 3 days or more. They're in more than they're out. They're sort of with you more than they're not. Also, if you are not job sharing it, you're not doing sort of Monday to Wednesday, have a handover day, Wednesday to Friday, that can work. But if you are just need 20 hours of work, for example, so you can have just one part-time or working part-time doing that role, I would always split up the days that they're in. So there's always no more than one working day when they're out. So they might say, okay, I want to work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. This is a common one. I want to work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because then they can have a nice long weekend. That works for them. As a business, doesn't particularly work because once they've gone home on Thursday, there's nobody until Tuesday on that particular set of activities. And that's too big a gap typically. So you can say, well, can't do that. I could do Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But make sure there's no more than one working day gap till they're next in. Last point here, make sure you have that solution. So if you're going to try and find another half to them, or somebody's doing mornings, you need to find somebody to do the afternoons. On the part-time work in particular, make sure you've found that person before you confirm they have it. Because you have got, going back a slide, that inability to recruit additional staff is a genuine reason if you can't find them. Obviously, hot topic at the moment is the in the office, out of the office working. Again, understand how it's impacting quality, employees, other employees' performance. A big challenge to this is the generational split. Younger generation much prefer being, and to be honest, largely need to be in more because they're learning off others, and they often haven't got a living accommodation that suits working from home. And the more experienced people with the families want to work from home, but if they're at home, then the younger people haven't got anybody to learn from. So that, again, can impact employee performance, would be your reason there. So there's lots of reasons here that are very helpful. You just need to consider things, explore them, and then see what works and what doesn't work. Any questions on the flexible working side of things? Nope. Good. So family policies. We've got a number of them: paternity, parental leave, bereavement leave. So parental leave, bereavement leave coming in. These are largely statutory or non. The bereavement leave is unpaid. It's just the right to take that time off. So in my experience, there's no financial change or hit to businesses. It's the same as it has been. It's just allowing people to take it from day one rather than after 2 years or whatever set period of time. The paternity would have been earlier than that. My experience is there's actually still limited take up, for better or worse. It's not one that's taken up a lot. But they do, not so much the bereavement leave, parental leave. Absolutely, they have a responsibility to request that in good time. There's a set number of weeks laid out, so you do have ability to plan for these if they request it, and you can, make sure you ask for that. These type of things do generate a lot of goodwill and retention. So culturally, back to the war for talent, talent's one. If somebody's had, and I think a number of organisations do this, anyhow, somebody has got a close bereavement, then absolutely give them a day off with pay if that's affordable. You're going to get a lot of goodwill from doing that. So it's your choice how you do this, but they have the right to go on an unpaid basis. 0 hours. Now, I don't actually think there's a huge number of these out there. In certain industries, they are more prevalent. These are being removed, certainly removed from the employer being able to insist on a zeros or offer a zeros hours contract. If staff members enjoy being on a 0 hours contract, they can choose to keep on it. Which is, I'm glad that's recognised, because 0 hours contracts do work both ways. Yep, the employer isn't beholden to offer a particular number of hours and incur a particular amount of cost. Equally, the employee isn't required to work the hours that the employer asks. So actually, neither of you have particular certainty in this situation. So where it's moving to is guaranteed hours must be offered. So, and that will be calculated over a 12-week, the last 12-week rolling average. That needs to be the guaranteed hours that they were offered at the point they offered that contract. We, as an employer, if you're going to change the shift or that the number of hours worked needs to be changed, you have to give reasonable notice. And if you don't, you will have to compensate for that if you take away shifts. And the ability to fire and rehire, the famous P&O case, well, that got through because of maritime law, but that loophole is being closed. So you can't go, okay, I'm changing terms and conditions, all you go, and then rehire them back again. So how can we avoid those? I think one or two of you did mention this in your questionnaire before coming, so this is relevant to a couple of you. I think, again, good management practice will help you round this one. You are going to have to be more active in analysing how many hours you actually need, typically looking at past records, trends, indicators that you know suggest how much resourcing you need. So you're going to have to be more proactive and scientific, I suggest, about how you do that to know what guaranteed hours you want to offer. This is about the number of fixed hours. So I believe you still have the opportunity to vary the timing of those hours somewhat during that fixed hour period, if it's a fixed hours per week or fixed hours per month, obviously giving reasonable notice for the shift changes. And you can consult on changes. So the fire and rehire is, you know, unilaterally banned, but consultation can get you a long way. You have an open conversation with your team about the changes that need to be made on working hours and how they could be made, and between the team, how you can get the coverage you need. You are, I would suggest, quite likely to be able to get that through. Because you're taking into account maybe it works for somebody else it doesn't, and you can jiggle them around. So having open, honest conversations with the team around where you need to get to, where you are now, where you need to get to, how you can move that way is definitely a good way forward. Any questions on the 0 hours? Anybody got those that they're particularly concerned about?
Hi, Helen. I've got a question on kind of the self-employed piece and the 0 hours piece. And I don't know if it's relevant to this. If it's not, please just tell me to be quiet.
Yeah.
But if you have, say, an employee that wants flexible working, and so sorry, it's going to yourself, your flexible working and 0 hours. So you have an employee that wants flexible working, but it doesn't work for you, for whatever reason. Do they then hand their notice in?
Yep.
The notice periods, you know, they range from 1 week to 3 weeks typically, 3 months typically.
Yeah.
But it takes longer than that to hire somebody, typically.
Yep.
So you could find yourself in a position where you've got rid of somebody, or you said, I can't do your flexible working, so they give their month's notice in, but you can't rehire. But then if they turned around to you and said, well, look, I'm happy to do the flexibility that I wanted, say they go from 5 days to 2 days on a self-employed basis until you find somebody else. Is that problematic in terms of employment rights? Do they remain an employee? Do they switch to a 0 hour contract? Is that kind of saying I'm giving you your flexibility, but I'm not because I'm making you self-employed?
I would definitely check that out with an employment law, HR current practitioner. My sense would be you would need to be careful that by taking them on for the 2 day, for the shift they wanted to have, you're sort of admitting that that can work for you, in which case your justified business reason for not accepting the flexible request, you've just driven a coach and horses through that. That's my sense of it. You would have to be very clear about it is far from ideal on a short-term basis. This would be better than nothing, but it's not, in better wording than that. But I would watch out for that piece, is that you're actually accepting what you rejected.
All right, thank you.
Right, statutory sick pay. This is another.
Helen,
sorry. Yes.
Sorry, can I go back to that last one? I had a query on that as well. So for me, I am getting quite concerned about the changes. And I'm wondering if I should put them onto something like this contract, where instead of giving them specific days, which is what they currently have, and then they have the flexibility of swapping with each other, so I don't have a problem with that. But am I better off giving them a contract that says how many guaranteed hours I'm offering them and not always giving them the same days? So I'm keeping it more flexible. Even if they end up with the same days, do I word it that that's a flexibility and what I'm offering them is a minimum of this number of hours?
I'm probably the opinion if it's working now, I'd leave it as it is.
Right.
Because you're introducing uncertainty for them.
Right.
And uncertainty is not something that humans, deal particularly well with. So I wouldn't introduce a layer of uncertainty that you don't need. I guess, what are you trying to prevent happening by thinking of that change?
That they feel like those particular days are their days, and that the flexibility that I feel that I've got is removed from me. And therefore, if I decide that I'd rather have them in on a different day, then they go, no, these are my days. This is what I have to do. This is legally what I'm allowed to do. And if you don't want me in, you'll have to pay me for it. My budgets are tight. And if I'm starting to pay people for days that they're not doing because they don't want to, because it's kind of now been stipulated that those are their physical days, because we have a really flexible situation, and I've just allowed them to decide which days they do because I'm a nice.
But that's not in writing.
It's not in writing, no.
Okay.
But I think quite a lot of these things are, you say you've got someone on a 0 hours contract at the moment, but actually their contract is really an average of their number of days that they've done over a period of the last 6 months. So that's how you calculate things like SSP and all sorts of things. So it doesn't matter that someone's a 0 hours contract. It's actually about the average hours that they do.
Yes, and in your way, I think they would actually want the flexibility.
Yeah, they do. They do, but it's how you build that.
Let's take that offline, Liz. I think let's have a separate conversation on that.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
I think that what I would say for everybody is don't lose the goodwill that you already have. Would be that. Yep. Lottie, I can see a raised hand.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not going to put the camera on just because I'm ill. But yeah, I just wanted to ask if, in terms of this kind of flexibility, I've got a member of staff who I gave additional hours to kind of introduce another element to their role. The problem is that what we initially discussed was maybe doing a few of those extra hours from home, but what they're now doing is kind of doing 9 to 10 hours on one particular day to try and kind of squeeze those hours into the day. And I tried to impress upon them about needing, obviously, the 20-minute break if they're doing that, rather than literally sitting at their desk for like 10 hours. And I need to kind of talk to her about it. But is it okay to let an employee work that many hours? I don't think it's healthy to condense your hours like that. I don't think it's great for the business, like you talked about in terms of what works for the business. Or would it be unfair to kind of now say after a couple of months, what you need to be kind of doing some of that 10 hours, over another day. So she's working 3 days a week, and one of them is that kind of long 9-10 hour day.
That is quite a shift. Yeah, you need to be having the right breaks of the right duration there, and be aware of the health and safety if they end up in the building on their own. And if you notice a performance change, are they really on their game for 10 hours straight or not? So if it's not working for the business, then I would have that conversation. Look, we'd actually, like Uber so that you can interact with other people on these activities. It can be quicker because there's not you're doing all this work and can't talk to anybody until they start 2 days later or the next day or whatever. So I would, it doesn't sound great to me. So I would try and do that through conversation.
Okay.
Helen, I've got a question. We do 0 hours contracts, and because of the nature of the business and also the people that we employ. But then we do offer guaranteed hours after the 12-week probation period. So what I would do in my instance is I would start them off on low guaranteed hours and then increase. And there's nothing in here that, from what you're saying, that I can't do that.
No, I think that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Right, I will move on looking at the time. Right, yes, this is the next big one, statutory sick pay. So everybody from day one, this is the proposal, will get statutory sick pay from day one of their illness. At the moment, it's the day 4 of consecutive illness that they get it. So somebody off on a Monday, back in on a Tuesday, that Monday they would get statutory sick pay. Also, those on low pay were excluded and are now going to be included. So this for me means we need to get much tighter on managing sickness absence. Otherwise, you're going to end up paying a lot of statutory sick pay that you're not currently. The upside, looking on the positive, is that people, who want to be paid and know they're not going to be paid at the moment and struggle in full of germs and spread them graciously around everybody else, they hopefully are not going to be coming in because they'll get at least paid at statutory level. However, you might have some who are habitually off for very poor illness that you are, would then have to pay. So how can you manage this? Firstly, the biggest thing is to do a robust return to work interview. So this is perfectly legal. If you go onto ACAS, I'm sure they've got a format for you to use on this, or any HR service that you have will have a simple return to work interview form, which means somebody, their manager, sits down with them the day after they return and goes through what was the reason for their absence, what was the impact, how can they prevent that happening again, go through the impact, make it just a little bit uncomfortable. So it doesn't feel as attractive to do that again if you think you have some slight malingerers there, for those who might be abusing it. The other way I think we can use this to our benefit is also people who are working, maybe even remotely, and they go, no, I'm going to keep working, but actually they're so ill, they're not really effective. But at the moment, because they're working, you're paying them full pay. You could say, actually, no, look, please go off sick. You'll get your statutory pay and recover. And also they'll recover quicker if they're not trying to work at the same time. So this is an interesting one. There are potentially higher costs for us, but I think it gives you a way of actually having some slightly more helpful behaviour from people who genuinely are sick and are genuinely thinking they're doing the best for the business, but often they're spreading it around or they're prolonging their illness because they're working when they really need to rest up. Or you keep, use your discretion on do you do statutory or full pay, depending on what you're currently doing. But be aware this could be, depending on your business and the nature and the number of sickness days that you have people calling in sick, this could be a big financial hit, especially for those with larger teams. Right, so we've covered quite a lot of stuff there. Back to the Menti, which just mark off, and you can mark as many as you want on this. Which ones of these concern you most? Where have we got the most concern about how this is going to be impacting you? So for the strongly disagree, that side, I'm not concerned, to strongly agree, yep, this is a biggie for me.
Sorry, Helen, I've lost the Menti link.
Oh, okay. Where's my little... There we go, here we go.
And I don't have it because I didn't. Oh.
There's a QR code back up.
Have you? Do we have to do it on the phone?
Yes, it only works on phone.
Sorry, I've only just got back into the office.
Helen, while people are answering that, can I ask you a question on the sick pay, please?
Yep.
It's just a question on who's sick. So if you have an employee that's sick, and obviously they then want to work at home, and you say, look,
Yeah.
you're ill, I don't want you to work at home. For all the items that you just said, they're unproductive, what have you. I'd rather not pay someone for 4 hours a day instead of 8 hours a day because they're ill.
Yeah.
That's kind of just managing that, which I suppose is one question. But the second question, which was actually the first question, is if it's not the person that's ill, but it's their child that's ill. So say they've got a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever.
Yeah.
And that child is ill, so has to stay at home. Therefore, the parent who's looking after that child clearly probably won't be doing much work if they're looking after the child. But are they sick or are they just holiday?
They're holiday / unpaid leave. They're not sick.
Okay. Which is a good point on the unpaid leave. Do I have to grant unpaid leave, or can I just say no, that's holiday?
No, I don't think you do have to. I think you can ask them to take holiday. Again, it's back to your relationship with the employee.
Yeah, normally it's fine. It's just like
if this is something that happens really regularly, you know, and it's, you know, it is impacting productivity, then I'd be going, no, it needs to be holiday. If, you know, it never happens to this employee, they it's happened this once, and actually you pretty much know they're going to catch up in their own time anyhow, then I, you know, just let it go. You can have a bit of wiggle room there. What I would say in using that wiggle room is just make sure you're not at risk of any kind of discrimination. That, you know, you use your discretion more for men than women, or vice versa, or more for senior roles that happen to be more white than junior roles that happen to be more color, you know, different diversity. Just make sure you're not indirectly discriminating.
Thank you.
Okay, so day one employment rights wins the race, and the sick pay, but actually flexible working is up there too. Good, right. Bear that in mind. So we've gone through a lot of changes, and these changes are going to need to be managed, and I think we should think about them quite seriously in terms of how because there's going to be, as I've suggested, likely some changes to the way you manage your team. Certainly changes to the recruitment process might be needed, changes to the onboarding, changes to how you manage so you can actually comment about productivity as a response to flexible working requests. You're going to have data for that, which is going to, this will create a change dynamic in your organization. So we need to be conscious of that and aware of the change curve that you will be going through as you're going through this webinar even, but also your team will be going through as well. And this is a classic change curve where initially it's shock. They can't do that. That was my reaction. They're taking it down to day one, right? So I was like in shock, absolutely. Then I went to, no, surely that can't be right. You might have got to frustration now. So we kind of, this is our motivation, if you like, our energy around it goes negative down here. We go, woe is me, this is awful, how on earth, it's going to ruin everything, how am I going to afford this, blah, blah, blah. Then we start getting a bit proactive about this, thinking, okay, well, I could try doing it this way. This might work to wake up. How are we going to adopt this? How is this going to work? Then we go, okay, yep, this is how we're going to deal with it. And then we get on, integrate it into our normal business lives. So this change curve happens. For some things, we might go through it very quickly, so we barely notice the dip. Other changes, you know, it's really significant and we can wallow in this depression down here for quite some time. So think about this, think about where you are. In fact, I'm going to ask you to plot, because I've just found this wonderful slide. You can now click where you are on the change curve. So when we talk about these employment rights changes, where are you at in your personal change journey? And the good thing is we're talking now ways away from them happening, so you've got time to move through the change curve, which is why I wanted to hold this webinar early in the year. So, oh, lovely, looking at these dots. Have a look where you are. Oh, somebody's already integrated up here. That is fantastic. You've gone through it very quickly. Somebody's not even on the change curve at the top there. Loving it. Right, have a think. I'm going to move on. So working through, so what I urge you to do is to think about this change very systematically. So for each of the changes that you think, whether it's the day one rights, it's the sick pay, who is it actually going to impact? So the sick pay is going to impact the employees, it's going to impact the business or the business owner. So think about who is going to be impacted by this change. Is it the customers if it's flexible working requests that, you know, is it going to be the other line managers if you have a team of other line managers who are going to have to learn a whole new recruitment process? We've got the who, how, what is going to be changing specifically. And when you know what is going to be changing, what do you think, what can you predict the response is going to be from the who? So who are the people who are going to be impacted? How are they going to respond to the changes that are going to happen? Because largely we know if this is going to be, or we can guess pretty accurately, is this going to be positive or negative, or create concern or whatever. So if you predict what that response is going to be, and before you even start this, making the change, and then also think, what is the ideal response you want from it? Because if we start from a point of knowing how we'd like them to respond, we can then deliver the change in a way that is most likely to do that. So if we think predictably they're going to think this is a panic situation, but we don't want them to, we want them to embrace it because it's going to have to happen, so we might as well be embracing it as positively as possible, then that's going to change how you present it to them. So take the time to do this. Working through these 5 steps. Who is it going to impact? And be as specific as you can. How? What is their particular response? Now I've got a little template for that. If you'd like me to send you the template, please just jump on this QR code. It takes you to the contact form on our website. Just put in your name and email address, and in the narrative box, just put, please send me the change impact form. And I will we'll get those across to you later today or Monday. So do grab that QR code now, take a quick shot of it, open up that page, and then you can fill it in your leisure. Just say that you'd like that.
I'm not finding the QR code working.
Oh, you're not? That's not very helpful, is it? Okay, we will come to another solution for that. That is a pain. It worked yesterday. Oh, Guy's getting it to work. Can you have another go?
Don't worry, I'll just email you.
Just email me. Yeah, perfect. So
it is working, I think. Yeah.
Good, good, good. So last couple of mentees, what are you, this is just type in the words, what are you now planning to do in order to prepare for these changes based on what you've learned here? What are your thoughts? Look through your notes. What do you need to do? Just type in a couple of bullet points. Yeah. Working with the HR partners is an excellent idea. I am not a legally expert and functioning HR person at the moment. I'm more a people strategy person. So very passionate about how we can make this work in our businesses, but please do connect with if you've got an HR service, all those detailed questions, please do go to them. Yep, review all the policies, very good step. Structured review process, absolutely. The days of the annual review are well over. We should be doing that 6 monthly, if not quarterly. Just throw that into the mix. Yes, the vetting the new employees needs to be in the, when we find the outcome of the consultation, we'll know what period of time that needs to be. 3 months is absolutely the furthest out I would leave that. So good. And then final one is what further support would be helpful. And please do everything. I'd like to know more about this, more about that. Please put this in here because I can then put on another webinar or get in an expert as needed. So do put in here because I really want, it is a big change for a lot of companies and I would like to make sure you are all well equipped for it. So if you're thinking I'd like something, add that here. Excellent. Whoever's put the robust recruitment process, please do drop me a note or put something in the chat box because also just to be very clear, the Menti responses are completely confidential, so I have no idea who's writing anything. So would love to help you with the recruitment process, but just pop that in a chat where I can see who it is or email us afterwards. Costs, what's help with costs? How can I help? Understand them? And that's a good idea. Update employment bills in our newsletter. Brilliant idea. The other thing I should highlight is the government has a fact sheet. I'm going to hold it up to the camera here, which can be quite helpful as well. It's just a very top summary of all, because there's lots of other little bits and pieces in there. Trade unions are going to find it easier to become established in businesses, but I'm thinking that doesn't particularly usually affect our SMEs, so I didn't cover it. So do get the government fact sheet. Maybe in fact we'll send that out afterwards to help you see all those things. So finally, as I said just there, if there's anything you'd like a more detailed one-to-one, please drop us a note. And we can have a no obligation chat about that, and would really appreciate feedback on this webinar. Guy, if you could pop the link in the chat, if it's not already, that would be great. And we've got the bit.ly link here if you don't see it in the chat. So if you could take a minute and complete the feedback, that would be really helpful for us as we do more webinars on useful topics. So I think I'm 2 minutes over, so let's wrap this up. I'm sure you've got other priorities for your Friday. Have a great weekend when you get there. And thank you for your interaction. And yeah, go start preparing for the Employment Rights Bill. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Helen.
Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, Helen. Really helpful.
Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, Helen. Have a great one. Cheers.
Yes. Bye, Helen. Thank you.